Hey, it's Imran Web Squadron. I've got a topic for you that I hear quite a lot, and I've started hearing more recently. It's one that isn't unexpected, and the title gives it away before we've even began. Web designers, web developers, are we real? Are we talented? Can we even call ourselves developers? Do we know what we're doing outside of just using WordPress or page builders? Because this argument's been going on for years, okay? Back in the day when the internet was first coming out and I was kind of, just about to go into university back in 1997, web design or websites was a pretty new thing. It was still quite mind blowing for a lot of us about emails. I mean, the first time I ever used email was in 1997. It was all a very new thing. And when you looked at websites back then, they were very code heavy in the way they were built. If you ever watched someone working on it or someone told you how websites were built, your mind kind of exploded with, what is all of this gunky code? What is all of this? It was very new. I hadn't even used Excel at that point in time yet. It was like, what are we doing? But once I started to get more into it and start to appreciate HTML and CSS and just basic styling things like how to do Ahrefs and hyperlinks and things like that, you started to appreciate just how in-depth it all was. It wasn't just a case of, yep, just drop this in here and away we go. But as time moved on, and with the advent of WordPress, and that it allowed a lot more people to enter website design or building their websites. Back in the old day, we had things like, Blogger and stuff like that. Once WordPress came out on the scene, and I might be wrong here. How long's WordPress been around? 20 years? Close to 20 years or something like that? When WordPress came around, it allowed people like me to get involved. Of course, though, I was not like an expert on HTML or CSS, let alone JavaScripting. And I was using things like templates or themes, theme forests. How much money did we all spend back in the day, hey? You were like, I want a new theme, and you'd end up spending $30, $40. You didn't think about it because it was the easy way to do it. Except when you realize you had to change something and then you couldn't change it unless the developer changed it. Anyway, do you remember those days? And over time, I got more confident with working with code and things like that. But when we had page builders come on the scene, and there were many, and I like to use Elementor now, and I'm really liking the way that Bricks Builder is working as well. And there's loads of different tools out there, okay? Not just Elementor, not just Bricks, not just Divi, Breakdance, all of that. It opened up the market for people to now start building their own websites and for other people, freelancers, agencies, and all of that. But the argument continued all the way from, when websites were first coming out, and the moment you had WordPress and then you had page builders, you're not a real developer. You're not really developing a website. And it's one of those arguments that you can end up in a vicious circle, almost like a loop, a paradox, because there's always different sides of the argument. Now, what I'm going to say is not the right or the wrong. You won't agree with it. You're probably going to leave lots of bad, nasty comments for me. But hey, go ahead. By the way, it's okay not to leave a bad, nasty comment, but to kind of disagree or say yay or nay. Look, web designers could be, let's break it all down, okay? Website designers could be people that just design websites. They don't actually build anything, they just design. I tend to use the term web designer, but in actual fact, I also develop as well. So I don't just get a template or a theme or a page builder, even if it is Elementor. I like to build from scratch. So you could argue that I am still just designing because I'm using a page builder, but I like to think that I'm developing because I might take a widget and I might add in my own CSS or some other HTML or some other styling or something, whatever's, okay? I like to use a site origin CSS or microthema just to push the widget to do a little bit more for me. So I feel like I'm developing. I might find some HTML or JavaScript that someone's already written, and I might tweak it to make it work for me. I'm not a JavaScripter, but if I can see the code and I can work out, well, this is what it's doing, it does help that I do a lot of SQL programming for, good 20 odd years in the NHS and the health service, algorithms galore. So I can look at the code and kind of go, yeah, okay, I get that. Let's tweak it a bit. So I might be developing. But that being said, if you are not doing any of that, does that mean you're not a website developer? There's a two and a four, two and against, sorry for that argument. Because in a way, if you just use Elementor and you've got a design spec or you're doing it from scratch and you're building the website out and you just drag and dropping pieces onto the page, you could argue that you're just kind of like editing, bits. How to explain it? You got a shopping bag, okay? You take the objects out the bag, okay? You got a bit of bread, and all you're doing is cutting off the crust or stuff like that. You're just modifying it a little bit. You're editing it. So you could argue that people that use templates and themes, that's all they're doing. They just change the logo, change the image, change the content. However, I sometimes say that you are still developing it to an extent as well, because you might have the bread, the jam, and the butter, but then you're going to decide, well, what order do you do it? Do you do the bread and jam, or do you do bread, butter, and jam? Or do you just do jam and butter without the bread? Boy, that would be messy. Might be tasty, but still quite messy as well. So this argument has been going on for ages about designers versus developers versus page builders. And that's even before we get into WordPress. Because I've had conversations with people, when they find out I'm web designing, if they can even hear that I'm using Elementor, you can see them like screw their face up. Like, oh, Elementor? And it wouldn't have mattered if I had said Bricks or Divi or Visual Composer or anything. The moment they know you're using like a page builder, it's like, and you want to kind of go, what's your problem? Right? If you're using whatever system you're using to build your website, as long as you get the job done, right? And it reminds me of when someone turns up, right, in an Aston Martin car or a big limousine, and they go, "What are you driving?" I have a BMW, but let's just say I had a Fiat Punto. I remember my first ever car was a Fiat Punto in 2003. Hey, it was my first car. I was fine with it. I didn't keep it long, but I was happy with it. It was a car. It did the job. It got me from A to B and sometimes to C as well. It did the job and it worked for me. But when I was in my office, and there was one guy, he had a convertible Mazda. It was a Mazda. Yeah, he had a Mazda. And I remember he was like, "Hey, what car you got?" And I was like, "Fiat Punto." Fix it again, Tony. That's what Fiat stands for. Fiat Punto. And it was like, does it really matter? Are we now going to start judging everyone on the car they're driving, or the house they're living in, or the clothes they're wearing, or the hairstyle, or the earring, or the nail polish? I haven't got nail polish on. Or the drink they're drinking. Okay? By the way, that's SodaStream in Pepsi Max in a mineral water bottle. Not that you needed to know that, but I'm telling you anyway. Does it really matter? All right? I can drive that car and away I go. And I feel like that if I'm using a page builder to get the job done, and it saves me having to write a lot of HTML and CSS, so be it. Okay? Because I've worked in the NHS, we've got information systems that allow doctors and people to access, patient level information. In the old days, we had a team building those websites. We told them what they want, and we had to wait on them to basically create it. Piecemeal, bit by bit, code by code, line by line. Now, in the world we're in, as long as that data is going into a back-end system somewhere, whether it's a SQL database or whatever, we can develop what we want on the front end, right? Tableau, reporting dashboards. Have you ever come across that system? Really powerful reporting, for dashboards, basically. Your SQL is all the hard work. That's all where all the, the number crunching goes on. But the front end, nearly anyone can do it once you know what you're doing. And for me, when it comes to websites, whether you're using Elementor, Divi, or anything else, if you're able to get the pieces and stylize it, we can sit here all day long. Designer, developer, what are you? Are you just following the spec of the rules? I don't care. At the end of the day, you are building something that's going to work. And you will have to do a bit of development in as well. Okay, you're going to have to start deciding the sizes of the images maybe. You might have to tweak bits here and there. You might get dirty with a bit of CSS to make it do something different, or maybe drop in some HTML code from CodePen or some JavaScript that you get from someone, code snippets, things like that. But where I'm really getting to, this is like a super long intro. What I'm really getting to is how a lot of people out there, right, even if they excuse the fact that you're using Elementor or any other page builder, when they hear that you're using WordPress, they're like, ooh, you know, there's like this big, like, there's almost like this barrier that forms between you and them. WordPress, many years ago, was over 40% of the market. It's now shrunk. I accept that, and there are other systems out there, but that's just because there's bigger competition, right? As the world grows and evolves and develops, there will be other systems coming out. But WordPress is still got a meaty chunk of the world's population in terms of what they use to build websites. And I love it. I love the hundreds of thousands of developers out there, the community, the support, the plugins. I mean, look, WordPress, they're still developing plugins, not WordPress, but developers are developing plugins for WordPress. Page builders, well, they're still developing in the back end. We are always finding a new solution. There isn't a day goes by that I don't see a new plugin or hear about a new tool or a bit of kit. And I go, could that work for me or my client? Does it make my processes or methods more efficient, more cost effective? So I don't really care whether you use WordPress or not, Elementor or Divi or any other page builder. If you can get the job done, I prefer to say we're website creators. We are creators. Creators, okay? Every website is a world. It is a universe, whatever you want to call it. Whether it's a theme, a template, or a blank page. If you don't do any tinkering with it, fine. If you're just going to take a template as it is and just bung it in, well, that's probably a bit untrue, isn't it? Because you will tinker with it. You will still add in a logo, content. Hopefully you'll change the image and you won't just give out the Astra storefront template to a shop and go, there you go, it's all done and dusted. Hopefully you'll do a bit more to it. But I just think that there's a lot of arguments out there about WordPress, Elementor, page builders, blah-de-blah-de-blah. I don't really care. Well, obviously I care, otherwise why would I be doing the video? You know, I mean, obviously I'm doing the video, but I just think that we all need to just accept that we are all creators, right? And I could go through so many analogies with you, or even the car one. What about writers? Hey, you had the writers that got an agent, got published by a big publishing publisher. When you had the self-publishers. Do you remember what the days were like back then? Oh, you self-published. Oh, you're an indie publisher. They were looked down upon, weren't they? I don't, why? They've written a book. If the book was edited and they got a great cover, a great blurb, and it was all checked and proofread, and people like it, not just your friends and family, why does that make a difference? Because you know what? These days, you just have to be a celebrity if you're going to get published. Not true, but I'm just putting it out there, right? You know, celebrities kind of get jumped to the front of the queue very quickly. But there's so many things we do in the world, right? Building a house, you know, do you build it brick by brick? Or do you build it with a prefabricated building that's kind of built elsewhere and craned over? Does it matter? Okay, I cook, but I don't always cook from scratch. I might get a ready meal and I might drop in a little extra spice and sauce, so I've developed it further. Get over it, everyone. Okay, designers, developers, WordPressers, non-WordPressers, whoever, whatever we are, we're all creators. We are all gods of our website universe. And I say it's time to stand up and be proud. I'm Imran Web Squadron. I hope you like, subscribe, share, and follow, because I'll see you.
Never break, always fight, never quit, do it right, play the game, win it life, have no shame, there's no time, feel the pain, live the grind, I could change, in my mind, pick a lane, commit and climb, the only way to win it life. I never miss, that's fact. Taking big swings, bitch, hand me the bat. Put me in the ring, you'll go out in a bag. 'Cause I sing